Hi guys, it is Wednesday night. It's a little bit like 5:40, so I haven't been starting at 5. I'm either way late for that or I'm way early for 6 o'clock. But either way, this is the Wednesday night Bible study. I am at the house this week instead of at the church. So this is my brick wall. I'm sitting out on my deck. This is my office at home in a lot of ways. As long as there ain't those hailstones ain't falling down from the sky that are really big and would hurt me. Hope everybody's all right after that. But and I'll go ahead and say it. I'll put this out there for everybody. It's somebody's birthday in the house, so we have to celebrate her. We don't have to. We get to celebrate her birthday and her being here for another year, and we're glad of that. So we're going to do that in a little bit. But I'm going to do this first, and then later on I'm going to have some good food and some cake and some ice cream. And I wish I could invite all of y'all out here to do that, but I can't. Well, I can, but I guess y'all are supposed to come and do that. However that works. But here we go. We're in James chapter 4, and Paul has some really strong words in James chapter 4, and that's something we need. We need to remember that there's a reason for strong words. There's a reason for strong belief, and there are times you just have to stand up and say that wrong is wrong and right is right, and we do it with gentleness and respect. But this is one of those times that James really just gets into it with them. And a reminder of who he's writing to. He's writing to Jewish Christians throughout the world. It wasn't meant for one just little pocket of people. He was talking to all of them, all that have been scattered around and those in Jerusalem. He was just talking to the Jewish Christians, and at the time he wrote it, that's mostly who it was. There wasn't a lot of the Gentiles who had come in yet, but he's writing to them and just kind of telling them how to act. And he's writing to people, and this is kind of where he gets into in chapter 4. He's writing to people that just didn't always get along. Now, imagine that, a group of people who don't always get along. Do you know anybody like that? I sure do. I'm one of those people. I don't always get along with everybody. I try. I try, and I'm usually trying, but they don't get along with each other. There's places that there's disunity in the church, which is obviously bad. There's arguments, there's disagreements, there's people criticizing one another, criticizing the church, criticizing whatever, just being critical. Some people just get critical sometimes. There's personal attacks that are going on. If you look at the writings of Paul, you see this mirrored as he goes throughout the church, and that's not just church folks. That's just people. You get a group of people together, and you try for unity, and unity is unity of purpose and unity of direction, but you're still going to have disagreements. Not everybody gets along all the time. It happens. But he begins to, and I'm going to read this in just a second, he begins to kind of show it as if you have conflict inside, it's going to result in conflict outside. He ended chapter 3 talking about two different kinds of wisdom. James did, the wisdom of the world and the wisdom of God. And he mirrors this now with there's two kinds of desires at war within us. We do have a war within us every day. We have that human nature that's within us, that worldly nature that's within us, and by the grace of God, by the gift of God, we have a godly nature that is within us, and they battle. They battle together, and we can hold on to God, and He can win that battle. We don't win it; He wins it, but that battle's still there. So I'm going to read chapter 4, and we're going to get into it and talk about this a little bit more. James chapter 4, beginning in verse 1. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and you fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You ask with selfish motives. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think the Scripture says without reason that He jealously longs for the Spirit He has called to dwell within us? God, what a wonderful statement. God jealously longs to be with you. He just longs for it. But He gives us more grace. That's why Scripture says God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble and the oppressed. My favorite verse, submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, he will flee from you. Come near to God, and He will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. Brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother and sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you're not keeping it, but you're sitting in judgment on it. You're kind of putting yourself equal with God. That's a bad thing. There is only one lawgiver and only one judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor? Now listen, as an ending to the chapter. You who say, today or tomorrow, we will go to this or that city, we will spend a year there, we will carry on business, and we'll make money. Why? You don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears and for a little while, and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. So then, if you know the good you ought to do and you don't do it, you sin. We go back to the beginning. What causes fights and quarrels among you? He said it come from your selfish desires within. We have that battle of selfishness versus selflessness. God is selfless. We are selfish. Our human nature is selfish. And that battle in between, and it makes a whole lot of sense. It's purely logical. When I'm being selfish and I'm concerned only with what I want, only with me, this is what I want, and I'm looking at nobody else, no other perspective but my own, that's going to cause conflict with everybody else. Because they're not giving me what I want. And so I'm going to get what I want. I have teenagers, and they have conflict, and it happens. You get enough people, it doesn't matter what age they are, you get them together, they're going to have conflict. And a lot of times you can boil this conflict down to, one side has what they want, and the other side has what they want, and there's absolutely no thought between either side of the other. And that's where the conflict comes. When we use our godly nature, when we follow after our godly nature, we are thinking of others. God is love, and love is a thought of another. It's putting somebody else in front of yourself. It's not to say that we don't have to understand what we want. We know there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with wanting something. But it's being able to look at something from somebody else's perspective to know, okay, here's what they're thinking. Here's what they want. And I get that. Now, I may not give them that, but I at least can come from a place of understanding. So these conflicts are coming from a place of selfishness. And their own selfish desires. They just want stuff. Whatever the stuff is. Whatever that, if it's something like fame and fortune and good standing, or if it's something just as simple as I want food. It's a selfish desire. And he says you have not because you ask not. You got to ask God. It kind of echoes in the first chapter, in the very first chapter of James. He says, anybody who lacks wisdom, let them ask. God will give it. God's waiting to give you this. He's waiting on it. But when you ask, don't be of a divided mind. And he's getting right into that again, that divided mind. When we ask God, do we have a divided mind? Are we asking God because we're purely selfishly, I just want it? Or am I thinking of what God wants for me? And that relationship I have with God, that relationship I have with others, why am I asking? Am I asking for purely me because I want it? Or am I asking for the good of the world? Am I asking for the good of someone else? Am I asking for the good of my relationship with God? And that's that human nature, that selfish nature versus that worldly nature versus the godly nature, the selfless nature, to think of other else. And also, when we start loving something else, he says, you adulterous people, don't you know friendship with the world means enmity against God? He's not telling you not to be friends with people, obviously, but we begin to put stuff ahead of God, and I get in a lot of trouble when I say this because I'm stomping on my own toes. You ever put football ahead of God? We live in the South. Football is like everything, football is great, but we can put even something that simple above God. Oh, I can't attend church. The ball game comes on early this week. What? I've been that way with other things. There's other hobbies that I've had, and these hobbies become something that I strive after because I want that. I want whatever the thing is that I'm collecting at that time. I want that, and I'm not thinking about God, and I start to put God on the back burner, and I make God my enemy in that. And he uses this term, you adulterous people. And that was a strong language. It was strong language, especially for Jewish Christians who've grown up and they learned the law, they learned the Old Testament, they learned the prophets, and that kind of imagery, that statement is used a lot, especially through the Old Testament with the children of Israel, and they were an adulterous people. They would run to other gods, and that's getting into that relationship of Jesus as the bridegroom and us as the bride, the church as the bride. and that almost marriage relationship. Listen, when I run after other things, that's just like I'm running out on my spouse. I'm running around with other people on my spouse. And that should not be so. That should not be it. Does that mean that I can't have, a friendship and a relationship, a platonic, whatever, an innocent relationship with somebody else? That's fine. But they cannot come before God. They cannot come before the spouse. They cannot come before the bridegroom. So, God opposes the proud, which is the selfish. He shows favor to the humble and the oppressed, when we realize that we are nothing without Him and we have nothing without Him. And so it gets, well, how do we solve this? How do I fight this human nature, this worldly nature within me? And it's a really simple statement. This is one reason why it's probably, if I have to pick, this is my favorite verse in the Bible. I know I say I love a lot of them, but this is it. This is a verse I come back to over and over and over again. James 4:7, submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. It's really simple. It is simply a submission to God. That God, I'm nothing without you. I need you. I've got to have you. I submit myself to you and your will and your way. And when we do that, the devil has no hold, and he will absolutely flee from us. It goes on, come near to God, he will come near to you. I love that statement. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. It's getting a little bit windy out here. I hope I can get done before the rains. But purify your hearts, you double-minded, and wash your hands. It's a literal saying, wash your hands. It's kind of a literal thing. It's to link something concrete and tangible that you do every day with the cleansing of your heart. Listen, you wash your hands. They had to be ceremonially clean in the Old Testament, which means literally they had to go wash. They had to wash their bodies, not just their hearts, but their actual bodies. So it's one linking with another. So he said, wash your hands, purify your hearts, grieve, mourn, and wail. Listen, when we repent, there's sadness there, because we have to realize I hurt God's feelings. I hurt God's heart. I hurt God. And that should cause sadness within us. So grieve, mourn, and wail. He says, change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up. In other words, quit throwing yourselves up. You don't have to. God's going to take care of that. Submit yourself to God. It just mirrors that one. It's submit yourself to God. Resist the devil, he will flee from you. Come near to God, and He will come near to you. We are nothing without God. We are absolutely nothing without God. And he goes on, and he says, don't slander one another, don't speak against another, don't try to destroy somebody else's reputation. That's not how we should be. It goes back to controlling the tongue. Don't run each other down. Don't criticize. Don't get after each other. Put your faith into practice. If you have a disagreement with somebody, handle it privately. Now that's another place in the Bible, but that's how we do that. You handle it privately. You handle it with gentleness and with respect. And you do it God's way. Not my way, because my way is not the good way. But it's better, just keep silent. If you don't have something uplifting to say about somebody or to somebody, keep your mouth shut. So let's get this done really quick. It says, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into this city. People did business that way in that time. They traveled a lot. Here we go. I'm still here. They traveled a lot, so they would do business. And he's not saying, listen, don't do business. He's not saying, don't make plans. But he is saying, don't make plans without God. It's really simple. Does it mean that you have to say on every single thing that you say, well, if this is God's will, if that's what you need to do to remind yourself, then do that. But it's that we don't do anything without God. That we include God in everything, even the mundane, everyday stuff. We include God in everything that we do. We look for God's will in everything that we do. When we go to a new job, we're praying about it. When we move to a new house, we're praying about it. When we're going to change our bank account from one bank to another, we're praying about it. It's not that we don't do these things and we don't handle these things we need to handle. It is that we include God in everything that we do. And we submit ourselves to God's will. And that's what the important part is not ourselves, not our own selfishness, but the desire of God. So that's chapter 4 of James. We appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Announcement is Sunday. We will be meeting together on Sunday, and the doors are going to open at 10. Service will start at 10:30. Observe your social distancing. Get 6 feet away from each other and all that good stuff. Don't hug. Don't. We want to, but don't. Wave at each other. Sit in your family groups, of course, and wear your mask if you have a mask. If that's kind of something's up to you. But we're not going to take up offering. We're going to have the offering plates set up somewhere so you guys can you just don't even have to touch each other. But we're going to meet together and we're going to worship God together, and I'm really excited about that. No Sunday school. We'll start that in a little bit. But we're going to take baby steps and we're going to get this thing rolling again. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you again. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you later on. Bye-bye.